The REBT Advocates, number 17, with Dr. Michael R. Adelstein and Tommy Bateman. Let's get started. All right, Michael, today we wanted to use the power of illustration to get the point of REBT across. A lot of times people use analogies and anecdotes in order to in order to illustrate the greater point they're trying to make, and REBT is no exception. For example, REBT, one of the core philosophies is it's not what happens to you, it's what you think about it that leads to emotional disturbance or an emotional reaction in general. So, for example, you got a guy, he loves boxing, he goes into the boxing ring, and he's losing terribly, and he's getting his lights punched in, and it's painful in a way, but he's thinking, I love boxing, this is a great activity, and I'm learning so much from this guy that's beating me. Yeah, this hurts, but man, I'm having fun. Emotional consequence from that, the C from that is, he's happy, he's having a great time regardless of the physical pain he's feeling. Take that, a person loses a bet and have to get into the ring with that same opposing boxer, that same opposing boxer, and gets his face bashed in, and he's thinking, this is awful, I was forced to do this, I hate boxing. What's the emotional consequence? Pain and unhappiness and great displeasure. But you have much more, Michael, in your repertoire, so let's hear some.
Okay, well, one of the basic assumptions of REBT is it's never situations themselves, but rather it's our thinking about them that creates our emotions. So one of the analogies I use or anecdotes I use is when you go to a sporting event, say a baseball game, and at the end of the game, someone won, one team won, another team lost. And leaving the stadium, there are some people who are happy and there are some people who are very unhappy, yet the situation was the same. They both viewed the same game. Mm-hmm. So what's the difference? Well, the difference is the thoughts in their head. Some wanted and some had a preference for one team to win, the winners, and some had a preference for the other team to win, the losers, and they concluded, that's great, my team won, and they felt good. Or they concluded, that's bad, my team lost, and they felt bad. So that is a stark illustration of how it's our thoughts, mm-hmm. not situations, that create our emotions.
That's right. I use that one quite often myself. It seems to really relate to a lot of the guys I talk to.
Yeah. Then another question I get sometimes from clients, especially after the first or second session, they say, I know the right answer. I know no musts, no awfuls, no global evaluations, but I'm still anxious or I'm still depressed. That's understandable, and I explain the two levels of learning. Level one is where you have a superficial recognition that there's no musts, that thinking in terms of musts and shoulds and awfuls and terribles and can't stand it is irrational. Level two is where you have a deep conviction that musts are fictions, and so are bad and good people. They're fictions. And the question is, what's the bridge from level one to level two, from a superficial recognition to a deep conviction? And the answer is practice, repetition, reinforcement, going over the truth or the reality again and again and again, as long as it's meaningful to you. The more you go over it, the more you get a deeper conviction. Mm-hmm. Another story I use alongside that is learning a language. Let's suppose you wanted to go to Paris and speak French with the natives. You're normally not going to start studying French once you got there. It's a little late then.
Yeah.
What you'll try to do is start practicing here in an English-speaking environment on a regular basis, day in and day out, and no doubt that after a few months or 6 months, you'll be able to speak some French with the natives. Mm-hmm. So it's the same thing with getting rational perspectives into your brain. It's practice, practice, practice. And the best time to do it is when you're not in a situation that you tend to make yourself anxious or depressed in, but when you're thinking more clear-headedly and you can think things through. And one of the main ways to do that is in writing, by writing out the 3-minute exercises, A, B, C, D, E, F, which we've discussed in another podcast.
Yeah, and I can relate that directly to my history as a police officer. We've practiced things over and over and over again in a calm environment for when the crap really hit the fan. We default to our training, and we do that today. We default to our thinking training, the way we were raised, and the only way to break ourselves of it is practice, practice, practice. Just like the person that wants to speak French.
Yes, exactly. And since the bottom line of REBT, in terms of our objective, is philosophic acceptance, acceptance of ourselves with our imperfections, acceptance of others with their imperfections, and unconditional acceptance of life with its problems. And some illustrations I use for that is one, the story of Ingrid Bergman, who was a famous actress in the 1900s. And she was on the set making a movie, and she heard from her doctor that she had terminal cancer and had about 6 months to live. And she published an article in Vogue magazine where she said, I refuse to make myself miserable for the last months of my life. I'm going to just go on, do what I love, continue making the movie. And she finished the movie. It was about the premier of Israel, Golda Meir, and I think the name of the movie was Golda or Meir. And then she finished the movie, and she did die soon thereafter. So that shows that even the worst case scenario, it's possible to develop acceptance.
Nice.
A last story about acceptance is sometimes when I work with a partner in a relationship or both partners, and it's very hard for them to accept their partner's obnoxious behavior. It could be their alcohol problem or their anger problem or their nagging or criticism, and they've been married for a long time, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and still they're upsetting themselves about their partner, and the solution is acceptance. And one thing that I suggest is to think about getting a dog for a present. Someone gives you a puppy, and you really don't like dogs that much. You like cats, and whenever the dog barks, you get upset. You expect it to meow because you wanted a cat. Well, sooner rather than later, normally you learn to accept the fact you have a dog and the dog is going to bark because that's the way it is. That's in their nature. So if your partner tends to get angry or drink too much or have other obnoxious habits, that's in their nature. Presumably they've had this habit or this emotion or this problem for many years, and they probably have it for the rest of their lives unless they get some rational emotive behavior therapy. So you might as well accept it because it's going to happen anyway. You can either eat yourself up inside about it or accept it. And accepting it does not mean liking it. You don't like it, you dislike it. You see if you can influence or encourage your partner to change or get them into therapy. But the bottom line is unconditional acceptance, so then you can enjoy the other parts of the relationship rather than making yourself miserable entirely.
Well, very good. Those are all very powerful stories, and I like to use these stories in session because, and I think other folks that want to practice REBT should use them as well because it helps ingrain these concepts in our head very, very clearly. I mean, heck, why do we have fairy tales to begin with and myths, and if not to really solidify a really important concept? So thank you so much, Michael, for sharing them today.
Oh, you're welcome, Tommy. Good to speak with you as usual.
Absolutely. All right, bye now.
Bye.